Ahoy VC, welcome to the Personal Oasis. This is the Blind Island. I'm your host Isaac, and today we are going to be doing a contest entry for the Vinyl Guru. She is almost up to 2,500 subscribers. Wow! Just congratulations, Christina. You deserve every single one of them. Your knowledge always blows me away. I've learned a lot from your videos, and I hope that you continue to climb up in your ranks and just continue to have nothing but great success. So if you're not a Patreon overrider channel, go ahead and support her or subscribe to her. Just check out her channel. I think you'll learn a lot from her. Now let's get on to this contest. Christina kept it super simple for us, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes all the rules get a little difficult. So what I'm going to do is just go with the one thing that she asked us, is to share 5 albums that we think are very important and should be shared with other people. And man, that's a great question, also an incredibly difficult one. But first, before I get into that, I want to share what's playing on the Personal Oasis, since that's something people have been asking a lot lately. And that is Eric Burdon and the Animals, The Twain Shall Meet. And this is a fantastic psychedelic album. A lot of people kind of disregard Eric Burdon's later material with the new Animals, but this is a fantastic record. It really reminds me of their Satanic Majesty's Request, but even more psychedelic, even more willing to take risks and go out there. If you haven't listened to this album, you can pick up a US copy for super cheap. Usually they're around $2 to $5, and this is an original UK pressing, which is a little bit more pricey, but I love this record and highly recommend it. So there's another one for you for free. But getting on to the actual albums that I would recommend, I've made a lot of recommendation videos, so I'm going to try and show a few that I haven't before, and maybe a few that you've seen me mention a couple of times before, just because I love them so much and would say you have to listen to this record. So let's get started with the first one, and that would be George Benson's Beyond the Blue Horizon for the CTI label. Now, George Benson, a lot of people associate him with his later 70s and 80s output, where he became really heavy into the sophistifunk and kind of almost elevator music style, jazz and R&B. He also started singing a lot on his own records. I am personally not a big fan of those late material records. However, before he started getting into that, he was really a student of Wes Montgomery and Grant Green. And this record right here is probably the best album that he ever came out with as a solo artist. He does a fantastic rendition of So What. He is surrounded by some fantastic players on here. And also, I love the CTI covers. They're just wonderful. I love those gatefolds. Really nice stuff. Yeah, but he's joined by Jack DeJohnette, Ron Carter, Clarence Palmer, and just a fantastic group. And it doesn't overwhelm the power of his guitar, and he's playing very much more so in a solid modal jazz styling, and it's a very melodic, introspective record, and I would highly recommend anybody who kind of has disregarded George Benson to take a look into this record and see what they might be missing, especially from his CTI albums. There's a lot to discover there, and they're usually very cheap, so I highly recommend you check out this record. Great jazz guitar, so great album right there. Then I have Tom Waits' Rain Dogs. This album has been talked to death probably in the VC. Though Tom Waits isn't mentioned nearly as much as I would like him to be, he is one of my top 3 favorite artists of all time. And I love this album. I would say that Alice is my favorite record of his, but I have that listed on multiple of my videos, and Rain Dogs is one that I have mentioned before, but I think, it usually is mentioned as his grand masterpiece, and I can definitely see why people would mention that. He takes everything that he was starting to do on the album Swordfish Trombones and doubles down on it, really goes into the orchestral junkyard master that he would become in his late life career. And the songs on here too are just so fantastic. There is no end of the wonderful music to be found. Singapore, Clap Hands, Cemetery Polka, Jockey Full of Bourbon, Gun Street Girl, Anywhere I Lay My Head, Downtown Train, Rain Dogs. It's fantastic writing, fantastic orchestration. As far as the production value on here, is probably one of the best sounding Tom Waits albums that has ever come out, and just a great album overall. If you're a fan of kind of that growling blues of Howlin' Wolf meets just the Captain Beefheart, you would really like this record. So great album, highly recommended. And the next one is another record. It's in my top 5 favorite albums of all time, and that's Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. What else can you say about this record that hasn't been said 1,000 times before? It is heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, and just a work of art. Written during the period where his marriage was starting to dissolve, Dylan has famously said that this record is not reflective or reflexive of his divorce, but he does think it is interesting that so many people list this as one of his best albums, because he's like, it's so miserable. The songs are so sad. Why would anybody want to be just listening to such sadness all the time? But I think that it is a record that's very important. It wears its heart heavily on its sleeve, and for such a reclusive artist as Dylan to have that out there is really cool and important. And this is an album that I would say needs to be on anybody's shelf if they're wanting to get into Dylan. This is a great starting point. Fantastic album, great listen. And then I have a post-rock album by a group called Winter for the Derby, Mini Grutzfeld, and I've talked about this one. This is actually the album that is featured when on my little, beginning and ending pieces of my videos. The little bit that you hear at the end is a portion from that record, and it's all instrumental with a little bit of vocals tinging in the background, very much in the background, almost whispered. And this is just such a light, lovely album, very meditative, and one that, if you're a fan just of that post-rock era, of just really wanting to be whisked away into an atmospheric, ambient realm, this is an album I highly recommend. Came out in 1996, and you can pick up this record super cheap on Discogs, and I highly recommend you do. It's one of those that will get you, it's perfect for a rainy day, get your head into a nice calm space, and highly recommended by this guy. So, great album. Then, finally, I have an album that was introduced to me by my wife, and that is the Beastie Boys, The In Sound from Way Out. I was never really a big fan of the Beastie Boys. I know sacrilege, many people love the Beastie Boys, and that's great. But this is an album that she found while going through YouTube and said, you need to listen to this, and boy, was I missing out, because this is a fantastic record full of 70s break beats, funk jams. Definitely sounds like it is from a different time and era. It basically takes and culminates all of the instrumental breaks from Beastie Boys albums and puts them all together with a couple of originals thrown in there. It was released a couple of times in the 90s. I think this is the second variant. The first pressings are incredibly difficult to come across. They were only released in France, but it just got a brand new release, I think either this year or late last year, and you can pick it up for about 20 bucks. And I highly recommend you do, because if you're a fan of breakbeats, if you're a fan of late 70s, mid 70s funk grooves, then this is going to be a record for you. You will be surprised that this is a Beastie Boys album, and it is a fantastic jam. Highly recommended. Great record. Well, that was my contest entry for the Vinyl Guru. What did you guys think? What albums would you recommend to people? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, I hope that you all have a great day on your own personal Oasis. Cheers.